Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Glass Note Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Wilbur, founder of the Coaches Site. Really cool episode today as I'm going to be sitting down with Matt Dumouchelle, the creator of Hockey Factories, which is a series that at the Coaches Site we are super proud of. So just a bit of a background. Hockey Factories is a deep dive into 5 of the top development hockey programs in the world, each from a different country. So last year, Matt profiled Shattuck St. Mary's in the United States, the Okanagan Hockey Academy in Canada, Alder Mannheim in Germany, Frölunda in Sweden, and Jokerit in Finland. And each of these organizations offered so many insights into how they develop players over the long term. So following the series, which was hugely popular, we invited Matt to come give a talk on his key learnings at TCS Live. That was awesome. And then following that talk, Matt and I were connecting, and he mentioned that he had the audio of all the interviews he did for the series. And I said, why don't we turn it into a podcast? So we did. So with the help of Justin Kwan, the producer of Glass and Out, him and Matt collaborated, and they created a 5-part podcast series, which just dropped. You can search for it wherever you listen to your podcast. Just look up Hockey Factories. Also, we have released the first episode on the Glass and Out channel, so you can find it there as well. And I would argue again that it's one of the coolest and probably more important, it's one of the most valuable things that we've ever put out at the Coaches Site. I really think that if you're a minor hockey coach or if you're involved in any way with a grassroots sports organization, that you're going to find this insanely valuable. So as a recap, if you want to check out the ebook, so we took all 5 of the articles and combined them into an ebook. You can go to thecoachessite.com/hockey factories to download that. I just told you how to find the podcast series and best of all, because of the popularity of season 1, we're working on season 2, and episode 1 of season 2 just came out on the Coaches Site. It's on Zug, a club in Switzerland. They won back-to-back Swiss League championships. Their development program for their hockey players, young hockey players, and any athletes in the community of Zug is so out of this world. I can't even put it into words. You got to read the article. It's so cool. And you can go to thecoachessite.com to check that out today. So with all that in mind, let's jump into my conversation with Matt Dumouchelle, the man behind Hockey Factories. Matt, great to see you.
You too, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I'm excited. I'll tell you what, I don't know what the last 48 hours has been like for you, but on my end, it's been a little bit bananas.
Yeah, it's been pretty surreal, to be honest with you. It was great seeing all the posts come up and all that stuff, and then I was just kind of sitting around, and I don't have the notification volume on my phone for Twitter, and I was quite fortunate because the first time I touched the phone, there was quite a bit of action there, and it's been really fantastic and quite humbling the last couple of days here.
Listen, I mean, and we just personally, like I'm so proud of Hockey Factories and the work that you've done. But I wanted to ask you, like, when we first started having this dialogue and kind of planted this seed, like, what were your expectations?
When we had our first conversation, we recorded the Glass and O podcast where I was interviewing you. So I'm not sure if I'm actually the second time appearer on this podcast or what. But when I had the chance,
you're up there. There's been a few others, but you're up there.
Fair enough. Yeah, when we had that conversation and we talked about doing this, I mean, to me it was just an incredible opportunity to get a chance to talk to a lot of people that I would never have really crossed paths with or interacted with at all in the game, and getting a chance to pick some brains and have those conversations. And really, even after the Shattuck one had been done and got sent out, again, hit refresh a couple times on the page to see the amount of views that were on there, and I was saying to my girlfriend, like, thousands of people have seen this, and it just continued onward from there. So, I mean, I don't think that I really had an expectation other than an opportunity to get involved with the coach's site and being able to have a little hand in that. But it certainly seems to have taken a life of its own on, and it's pretty thrilling.
It's amazing. And I mean, when we published the ebook, so today's Wednesday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and we put it out Monday afternoon. So I don't even know if it's been 24 hours, or sorry, 48 hours, but
Right.
within a couple hours, like we had, I think it was over 650 downloads. Like it
Wow.
was just like we had, it is just so cool. But at the same time, I've listened to the first two episodes of the podcast. Like, obviously, listened to them a lot when we were stitching it all together and
Yeah.
going through the editing process. But I've listened to the first two episodes front to back twice now since they came out. And part of me is like, it's not surprising because it's so good. Like, I just don't know. Like, I mean, we've been at this game for a long time, and I don't know that I've, in any work that we've done at the coaches site. And listen, I mean, we're super proud and we're humbled that we get to, provide hockey's top leaders a megaphone to,
Mm-hmm.
connect with a global community. But it's just so good. And one question I wanted to ask you, like, with the benefit of hindsight now, like the people you interview, and it really comes through in the podcast, like they're an open book, like they share
Mm-hmm.
everything. Do you have any inclination as to, are you just that disarming of a person that you kind of just made them feel that comfortable? Like what do you think kind of opened that door?
I'm not taking any credit for it whatsoever. The people that we talk to, right down to the core, love hockey, and they
Yeah.
love their program. They are proud of what they do, and I think anytime you're just having a conversation with anyone in general, if you ask them about something that they're really invested in, or really interested in, or really proud of, they'll talk for hours. And it could
Yeah.
be anything. It could be a card collection. It could be, whatever hobbies that they have. And with these guys, I mean, we're talking to the best of the best. And I think I came in with a feeling, quite honestly, of a bit of unworthiness to have some of these conversations at the start. I'm talking to Tom Ward from Shattuck St. Mary's and guys that have been in the NHL, that have on their way to the NHL, and trying to find out how they operate their programs and what they do and what stands out and all of that stuff. And they were all open books, because I just think it's something that they're all very proud of and something they believe in strongly. The sharing level, like you mentioned, is unbelievable. I mean, they want other people to know about this. I had a conversation just a couple of days ago with Ben Umhofer, who's the director of hockey at Shattuck St. Mary's, and he said the same thing. He said that he's listened to the podcast episodes and has written things down from what other programs are saying, because he wants to take away some of that information and see how they can use it there. But everybody wants the best for this game, and I think it's real easy when you when you start asking people about things that they're invested in emotionally and want to see succeed. You get the best answers, and the fact that they're all very open, like you said, to tell them what their quote unquote secrets are for the good of the game. It's really been impressive to hear some of these people talk.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. Like I was talking with our staff. We had every Monday we have a group meeting, and we were talking about hockey factories, and I brought that up. I said, just the sharing. I said it's unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that these top clubs are just because we've heard that from other clubs as well, that they're taking notes and
For
and
sure.
and they're viewing this as an opportunity. It's not just something they listen to on their commute to work. Like they're getting better off this. And one of my staff says, we have this, we have a for our the association and clubs and leagues that we work with, we have sort of a tracking doc. And he said, well, Aaron, he's like, is it really that surprising? He goes, look at the clubs and that are on this list, and it's
Mm.
really the who's who, not just the clubs featured in hockey factories, but I think the point was, it's just that it's no secret that the organizations we would view as being the best, they're the early adopters of the coaches site, not because the coaches site is a silver bullet. They're probably doing a whole bunch of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it all comes back to, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. And if we can get 1% better, we're going to invest in that, and we're going to invest in our people. So it's, and I guess maybe on that note, some of the people, and this was my favorite part of this whole project, was that I felt that you had the opportunity to shine a spotlight on people within these organizations that may otherwise not get a lot of recognition. Like, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
they do within their clubs and when they show up to the rink, but for the work that they do, and clearly how respected they are from their peers and the people they work with. But now, the entire hockey community gets to appreciate the work that they do. Was there anybody that sort of stood out to you as being like, where you recognize that this was a cool opportunity to tell somebody's story?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously go right to the top and the big names, of course. Like get an opportunity to talk to Tom Ward from Shattuck St. Mary's. When we go through different countries in Sweden and Finland, I mean, I had a Zoom call with Yari Curry, which I think I may have overboasted about a couple times in the first couple episodes of the podcast there. But some of the people that you only hear about and read about yourself and find out the background of, but like you said, it's a lot of the smaller people that really take precedence on some of those conversations. Roger Romberg was incredible with Frolunda. Also talked to Mikael Strom, who was the director of youth hockey. Again, not somebody that's probably front and center in that program, but was fascinating and had a great conversation with him. Tuomas Taskinen with Jokerit in Finland. I talked to him to do the interview and talk to him separately myself, just to gain a little more insight and a little more background on him. And he was at the time, he had coached U9s up through U13s and was now into a youth side of things. So somebody again who probably wouldn't get featured, like you said, unless it's within the club. But that's the way these clubs operate. Is Tuomas Taskinen has a voice in that room. The U9 coach can learn something from the U20 coach and vice versa. They're all trying to figure out the best way to develop these players from top to bottom and the bottom down, and everybody's on the same page. So they get the recognition that they certainly should in their clubs. And I'm glad that we were able to point out a few of those people and give them a bit of a stage to showcase themselves in the podcast.
Well, just in your everyday hockey life, you're an assistant GM with the Leamington Flyers, which in
Mm-hmm.
itself is a great organization and has had a number of great players roll through it. Is if there was like sort of one key lesson or antidote that you drew from this process that you could bring to that club, like, or I guess, or have brought to that club, what's it been?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been able to look at different levels. So, the Leamington Flyers are in the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, is a Junior B league. So there's obviously the development portion of things that we're continuously trying to work on to get kids to the next level. I don't know who said it, but there's only one league in the world, maybe the KHL, but one league in the world that's not a development league, and that's the NHL. Everyone else should have the mindset of development. And that goes all the way down to the bottom and all the way up to the top. So for us, I mean, there's a communication standpoint from there, and I think that gets emphasized a lot in the podcast and in the articles, to just make sure that everybody's on the same page. The messaging is the same. The practices are fruitful, that we're either doing small area games or we're focusing on particular things that we're trying to improve on. So there's a lot of takeaways for that, even just from an isolated team like a Junior B team, where you look at, we also have a relationship with the Sun County Panthers, and that's where you can really put that development stamp on things and kind of build that escalator, so to speak, for these kids that are going through that program. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of takeaways from this that we've certainly had conversations with and are looking to use at Sun County and create our own hockey factory ourselves.
No, that's awesome. And you know what? It's interesting what you say about, the NHL not being a development league, because that's something that I've picked up on just in the work that we do with NHL coaches, is that they're starting to view themselves, or at least view the benefits of player development, and the feedback that we get is they're like, look, like at the end of the day, we need buy-in, we need alignment, and the quickest way or the best way to get buy-in from players, even if they're making 10 million bucks a year playing the game, is to demonstrate that you're genuinely interested in helping them get better.
Mm-hmm.
And they said if you can do that, then they'll go through a wall. They'll be first on the forecheck, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll follow the other details that help the team win. But it just goes back to that ability to show that you know how to make them better. And I think that that's something else that we've received a lot of feedback on, is that one way that the game has changed is players today are savvy, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a good player, you probably have a skating coach, you probably have a skills coach, you probably have a sports psychologist. Like you're kind of incubated around people. So
For
you
sure.
know what good coaching looks like. And you can smell when a coach isn't equipped to make you better.
Yeah.
And players today, I don't think they want those coaches anymore. Like they don't
No.
want the rah-rah coaches that just like, they want coaches that know how to make them better as players, that can add value. And if you can't do that, I think your hands are really tied today as a leader, as a coach.
You are for sure, and Mike Needham from the Okanagan Hockey Academy hit on it quite a bit in the why, right? And that's something that we've heard a ton. We've heard from other guests that you've had on the podcast as well. The kids need to know why now, why they're doing a particular thing, and you still have the ability to go in rah rah. You can still go in and swear and kick a garbage can if you need to get a message across, and that's the way the message gets across to your group. But they've got to understand why they're doing it now. These kids are very smart. Like you said, there's a lot of people in their ear. Some of that's good, some of that's bad, but they're certainly more interested in, instead of just saying skate back and forth or go do this or run this drill, they want to know why they're doing it. They want to know what part of that drill, what part of this practice that they're doing is helping them get better, and in what aspect of the game. You almost have to explain it in a lot further or a lot deeper form in a practice before you get on the ice, because you don't want to waste the time that you have when you're on the ice. This is the drill. This is why we're doing it. This is what we're looking for. This is where we want you to take it. But creating the chaos of it as well, instead of having it so structured that it's just A to B to C to D and back, that you have to throw in some curveballs, and you have to see how they can think on their feet as well.
Yeah, and on that note, like one of my favorite excerpts, I guess, from the podcast is with Tom Ward from Shaddix, and he's sharing the story about um, how Don Granato, who's now the head coach of the
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo Sabres, but used to be head coach with the U.S. National Development Team, and I think this just speaks to the salesmanship that's involved with coaching today, and trying to get players on board with that why. And he talks about how Don would get in front of the players. Obviously, on the U.S. National Development Team, like all these kids are, super high end players, have been the best players where they came from, and in most cases are going to be high picks in the NHL. And he says,
Right.
okay, like you're drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks. You've been a top 6 player your whole life. You've probably been a top 3 player your whole life. How are you going to get on the team?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whose spot are you going to take? Tave's
Yeah.
spot? Are you going to take Hosa's spot, Kane's spot? And he goes down the list. And the message was, hey, like, if you want to break in with the Chicago Blackhawks or probably any team in the National Hockey League, you're going to have to learn these skills that are going to help you or equip you to be, a good bottom 6 player,
Mm-hmm.
like a checker. And I just thought, like, what a great example of how to get players on board. But again, it's like the why comes before the skill acquisition, and before you
Yeah.
get on practice, you got to get those players on board. So that was, and again, that was one of many stories that I kind of took note of just, I think it's just so valuable that, again, and you just going back to Mike Needham, like I hung out with Mike a couple weeks ago. So
Oh, great.
we coached together in Penticton. And, obviously at that time, like I was a younger coach, and, you're getting ready for practice beside a guy that's won a Stanley Cup and a
Yeah.
World Junior Gold medal. And it just amazed me. It amazed me then. So maybe it doesn't surprise me as much now, but like we're catching up. We haven't spoken in a number of years. And this is just a guy is so keen to get more information,
Mm-hmm.
that is so curious about different ways to do it. And it's funny, I like that. When I was taking notes, that the word curious kept coming up. It's just like all these people you talked with were, it just seemed like we're on this continuous loop of trying to get 1% better.
Yeah, yeah, and Mike was one of my favorite people that I got a chance to talk to. So I'm glad that you got to connect with him as well. But the one thing that kind of came up with a couple of different groups, and it wasn't anything that was really emphasized or anything like that. But as the process went on of writing Hockey Factories and a few different articles came out, I was finding that other programs were even asking just at the end of conversations and such. What did this club say about that, or what did they say about this? Like they're again trying to find anything they possibly can. Scott May, the Okanagan Hockey Academy, would have been the second one that we did. He said, "So what did Shattuck say about this, or what were they saying about this, and who else are you talking to?" And there's such a really like. From the start, everybody that we talked to was extremely accommodating with their schedules and their time, which was very appreciated, extremely open. And I think we just got a ton of good stuff. And I was the very fortunate enough person to be able to record those conversations and write those down and kind of create what we have.
Well, listen, I thought for the sake of today, because I've told this to so many people, and I've blasted this out to everybody. Like, I'm like, this is the blueprint for, I don't care what level you're at. This is the blueprint for how to run an organization or how to set an organization up. And, one of the comments that comes out in episode 2, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you touch on it. You said, the alignment's really important, but, a lot of these organizations, you're dealing with boards, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and you got to have that alignment. And I think that, frankly, particularly here in North America, that's what holds a lot of organizations back, because, everybody's an armchair expert, right? Like everybody,
agreed,
and so I kept coming back to him like, man, if you could start an organization from scratch, like almost a minor hockey expansion team.
Yeah.
How would you do it? Like what seeds would you plant? So I thought we could maybe, let's imagine that you and I are starting an organization from scratch. Where would we start? So I think, one thing that stood out to me was that all these organizations had really strong values. So if we were on a whiteboard right now, what would you suggest the values of our organization be?
I mean, the first thing that you would want to develop when you're going through that process is the philosophy. And the philosophy itself is not how are you going to play, what system are you going to play, or anything like that. The thinking behind the philosophy is, how are you going to develop players? What tactics do you use to create better players? Is it going to be more practices? Is it going to be individual work? Is it, where are you looking to find that development philosophy? Because the values are such a huge part of this. And one thing that we find as well, in some of the other conversations that I'd had too, more so in Europe than in North America, quite honestly, is like the philosophy runs the program. Like there's coaches, there's general managers, all of that stuff. And they're all part of the cog of the machine, but the philosophy runs the program. So you really have to start with a true idea or identity of what those are going to be. The value part of that starts with people. It really does, and it's simple and it's different being away from the actual ice itself. But you have to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to get good people around that are in tune or in line with your thinking. So the philosophy part of it, you've got to nail down, and the communication part of it, I think, is almost, if not more important, especially at the very start.
If you are involved with the Minor Hockey Association that hosts tournaments or multiple tournaments, or you're a coach who operates spring tournaments, or any organization that puts on events, then you're going to thank me for introducing you to Event Connect. Event Connect makes managing and growing your sports events simple and efficient. It literally covers every aspect of the event management, from scheduling, linking out-of-town teams or visitors with hotel bookings, to capturing registration fees and collecting additional revenue, all all on one platform. Best of all, it's free. Event Connect receives a small fee through its payment processor, but there is no upfront investment. I got introduced to Event Connect because several of our league and association partners began using them and raved about the time it saved, how user friendly it was, and the additional revenue they were able to generate. In fact, the feedback was so positive, we began using Event Connect to host TCS Live, our annual coaching conference at the University of Michigan. It was a great decision. I know firsthand how stressful it can be to run tournaments and events, and can't imagine going through that process again without Event Connect. If you want to simplify the process of organizing your tournament or event and tap into new revenue, then go to eventconnectsports.com to book a demo today. Don't go through the painful process of trying to run your next tournament without Event Connect. Go to eventconnectsports.com and get started now. Can I add something to that?
Yeah,
Just
please.
what I took away, like one thing that kept, at least I found was a bit of a theme, is that in that philosophy, these organizations, like they were rigid, meaning they didn't let a star player dictate that philosophy, or perhaps have them overlook that philosophy. And I think that kept coming up, like whether it was, Shattuck's for Londa Jokerit, where it was like, hey, like sometimes we get really good players that want to move along quicker, or they want special treatment.
Yep.
And we tell them, like, you're welcome to go somewhere else, but this is how we do it here. This is our philosophy. And they were rigid. Like they really guarded it, it seemed.
For sure, and Mannheim was a great example of that. I didn't use any names in the article, but just in some of the conversations that I had with Claudio Prado, Frank Fischhauter, who was a coach there and had won a ton when he was with the program. There are guys who are recognizable names that have NHL time that were not Alder Mannheim players, specifically because they were not going along with the philosophy. And you've got to have a set of balls on you to be able to look at a kid, no matter what age, that has talent and could certainly elevate your program and put your program on the map or whatever, but be able to say to them, it's not the fit for what we're trying to do, and have them walk away. Especially in some of these other smaller countries too, right? Like we focused on Germany in the John Alder Mannheim article, and how little ice there actually is in the country, and trying to get players interested in it from the start. This is very different from Canada, the US, where if you throw a snowball down the street, you're going to hit 25 hockey players.
Yeah,
they're creating these guys from 5, 6, 7 years old through their skating programs. So this isn't just all comers. This isn't, we're just taking this guy off the line. If that doesn't work, we'll just take somebody else. They're proud of the development that they're putting into these guys and trying to get them into their next levels. But they're also very, very protective of that philosophy, and they're not going to let an individual, whether that's coach, staff, player, whatever, come in and alter that.
Yeah, and just it's so funny because as you're speaking, it just dawned on me, like all these organizations. I'm sure if you go into their arenas, there's banners hanging from the ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've all had tremendous team success when it comes to championships, and just dawned on me, like that never even comes up.
No,
it never comes up. It's all the conversation is like, and it's, I mean, and a lot of these, like they go to their way to not brag, but they're obviously really proud of the accomplishments. But the accomplishments they speak to, it's more about, hey, like to what you just said, like we had this player, and like all these different people in our organization played a role in kind of shepherding these players along and helping them be the best versions of themselves. And that's to them, that just seems to override any championships or team recognition they get.
100%. And not to talk too far out of school, but in the next edition that we get to do of Hockey Factories, I have to ask a couple people. We talked for 45 minutes or an hour or so. You didn't mention winning at all. And I come from Windsor, Ontario. Didn't play minor hockey or anything like that in my lifetime, but have been around it enough now to know most people have the mindset, or parents or clubs or whatever, that we've got to win when we're 9, we got to win when we're 11, we got to win when you're 13, you got to win when you're 15. That's how you develop, is by winning. in Europe specifically, and we saw that with Jokerit especially. Frölunda was even the same way. The winning comes from the development. The winning is the result of the development. The group that is at U9 or U11, they may not win until winning starts becoming important. And so the question then gets asked, when does winning start factor into that? And for some of these programs, it's U18, which to
Wow.
think about is
Yeah.
unheard of. That would, you wouldn't last a full season as a coach in the U16 if you were just like, oh, they'll win next year. Like
Hey,
who's
Matt,
this
I'm
guy?
telling you, man, like you wouldn't last at a U8 coach
Yeah,
in most places in Canada
it is
if winning
wild.
wasn't your top priority.
And the thing that's great about and with the European model again, and we've talked about this before, just the separation of North America and Europe. And I really think one of the underlying things that I've learned from doing these articles is seeing that separation and seeing where the European mindset is stronger than in North America. To be quite honest, is that exact thought. They've got a lot of time with these kids to develop them. So Frölunda does the same, Jokerit as well. Jokerit's model is, at U7, U9, we're teaching them how to play offense with the puck. The next year, the focus is probably offense without the puck. Then it would be playing defense without the puck, or playing defense, defending the puck handler. So it's broken down and it's really extended over what we see over here, in the thought that it's really an overload of information. Kids are coming in now at U9 or U11 or whatever, expected to be able to do all these things. Jokerit, as an example, is, once they put everything together of the four different quadrants of the game that they're teaching, that's probably U13, U15 that they're seeing it all put together, and they're not worried about any of the time beforehand. The other thing that they mention a lot, and Mannheim mentioned it quite a bit in talking about the competition that they have with soccer in Germany, is the fun of the game. Like, it's really, they play games during practice that are just like the crushed ice games. They put out a bunch of stuff on the ice you got to maneuver around, or obstacle courses, and they build team camaraderie and competitiveness already just through these kids, just naturally by taking part in these games. So a lot of the things that they're doing is almost through osmosis, for the kids,
Yeah.
as far as taking this part and this part, but teaching the game in a very slow development level. Where again, and we talked about it just a couple minutes ago there, you try to do that with a U9 team in Toronto, and so we're just really going to focus on playing offense, or being the offensive guy with the puck.
Parents would look
That's
at
going to
you
be our
like you
focus
were
this
from
year.
fucking Mars. Seriously.
Not a chance. Not a chance. You would be laughed out of that building.
Fun.
And yeah. So what do you mean they're not playing small area games, and you're not working on their shot, or no? They're out playing Who's Afraid of the Iceman. It was one of the games that Jokerit plays, where the coaches basically skate around. It's like playing tag on the ice. The kids learn how to skate. And this is, in a U7 type age range, that are learning how to skate without even really knowing that they're learning how to skate. They're just trying to catch up to the coach. And all of a sudden, one day they've caught him, and then they're like, "Oh, this is fun," and it just builds.
So my biggest takeaway, and this is like I literally can hear this. It's like, and I can't remember the gentleman's name. Maybe you can refresh my memory from
Mm-hmm.
Jokerit. And um this is my number one takeaway from the series, and it's impacted me so much, not just as a coach, but as a parent. Is they talk about in Jokerit that if a young player, so at those 5, 6, 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
they come to the rink and they don't want to go on the ice. And listen, I mean, I've heard stories of NHL players that'll say, "Hey, like when I was young, I didn't want to go on the ice." I mean, the ice could be, when you're that age, it's probably kind of scary. And they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
they do not force any kids on the ice because they want hockey to be, a highlight of their day or an
yeah,
enjoyable experience. So they tell the parents, like, "Hey, if your child's not into it today, no worries. Like, come back tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
eventually they're going to be into it, and we're going to make sure that when they are comfortable, they're going to have the best time ever." And I've got my little guy is turning 4 shortly, and we started skating he got skates last Christmas. And, of course, like, I'll admit it, like, there's, we're on the ice for public skating and stuff. And I want to, I can't help it. Like, I want to start being like, hey, like, Austin, can you do this? Or,
Yeah,
try this. And ever since I've heard that, I catch myself where I'm like, Aaron, shut up.
it's
Let
true.
this, yeah, like, just let this moment be enough. Like, let him just enjoy. He's figuring it out. He's gonna, like, just let him enjoy it. And
Yep.
just like, that's your number one thing as a parent, is just make sure that he has as much enjoyment as possible, and trust that the rest will kind of take care of itself, whatever that is. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, like, I'm so thankful that I learned that lesson.
Yeah, and that
And
was
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was Tomas Taskinen from Jokerit, or Mikko Nurminen, who was one of the youth development guys there as well. And yeah, I mean, the quote, I think, is something like, on the Saturday that they come to the ice, they don't really feel like it. Maybe we try next Saturday.
yeah.
Again, okay, then we try again. It's funny you mentioned that, because my son's 5. And I've just got him enrolled in hockey, and he's just now in the first couple of weeks of it, and he did the can skate and all that. So he's learning still when he goes out there. And yeah, I mean, I think he's probably benefiting, or will at some point benefit, from the fact that his dad never played, because I'm not going to be able to tell him, this is how you skate, put your body here. But so I just get to sit back and relax and watch a little bit. But I catch myself too, from this the involvement in getting a chance to do these hockey factories, of like watching their practice, and seeing like what the coaches are talking about, or how they're doing different things with them and stuff, and trying to keep them engaged, and trying to make it fun. And there's a lot of programs out there that when the blade hits the ice, it's game time no matter what. And these kids got to catch on, and it's just starting to prove itself more and more that it's just the wrong way to do it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, so I guess on that note, like, if winning isn't the benchmark,
Mm-hmm.
you know if it's not the primary indicator of success, then how were the coaches evaluated?
So it's a great question, and the emphasis that these programs have on players is equaled to the emphasis that they have on their development of coaches. And again, they take pride in that. Some of these countries, in Frölunda as an example, and they talk about Roger Romberg and some of the other coaches that are there as well. I've been there for a long time, probably not going anywhere anytime soon. So some of these coaches do have to go to other programs, and they're more than happy and proud to say that they got a coach into the DEL, or they got a coach to a pro job somewhere else, just like they are with the development of players. So for the coaching, and Jokerit does this extremely well. They have what they called a competence-based framework, and what it was basically the development of coaching and the quality of coaching, and it broke down to 3 different things. It was self-development skills. So it was, what are they doing to help themselves? Are they members of the coaches site? Are they watching these tutorials? Are they reading these articles? Are they working on trying to find ways that they can make themselves better throughout the game? The people skills, obviously the communication, the atmosphere, what is their team like? How does the team act on the bench? How are they when they go on road trips to tournaments, and how are they representing the club in that kind of level, and the
Oh, great.
engagement that they have with the players themselves and such. And then the other part of it is the hockey know-how, is the substance, is when they're in these meetings, and these clubs pride themselves on all the coaches are in the room at once, and the U9 coach has the same say as the U20 coach, and everybody can learn from everybody. So what else are they bringing to the program? What do they know about player development, team development, and what are their goals for their particular program? So again, winning doesn't factor into that, and they're not overly concerned with. Allow me to rephrase that. The one thing that I want to make sure that the emphasis is, these are competitive people that want to win.
Yeah.
Like this is not we're all just having fun and I hope both teams win and all that stuff. Like, these guys want to win. They want to develop players for their first teams, to represent their country at international events, to get drafted by the NHL, to go play in the NHL and win Stanley Cups. They want winning to be something that these kids are always part of and that their program is always recognized by. But the development part of it will always play a bigger part than just going out and win, because we say this in one of the podcast episodes that's coming up and reference it a few times in the articles as well. I mean, anybody can win. Anybody can put a group of guys together, 20 guys, and only play 10 guys, and shorten your bench or ride a goalie, or find a bunch of guys and bring them in for a year and win. That can be done. It's not easy, but that can be done. But to have the sustained success that these programs do, I think was what our biggest focus of was through these hockey factories. Is like Shattuck St. Mary's didn't just win once. Like, they've won for the last 25, 30 years. Frolunda didn't just win once. They went a while without winning, and now they're right back into the development side of things, and that's the mindset that the program is under. Like, these are some of the most successful in the banners in the arenas teams in the world, and none of them talk about winning. They talk about development.
Well, a couple thoughts there. So this occurred to me the other day. I was driving home and I was listening to the podcast. I'm like, man, if you took the alumni from these 5 respective organizations and put an NHL team together, like, you might have the best team in the league.
I would think hands down. I mean, some of these guys would come because the best part is you'd get one of the best players that would be a top line player somewhere else. It's already in the mind that,
and 1-2 down the middle to start.
Yeah. That I can. And you'll get a guy who's a superstar that is already. Okay, I'll kill penalties if we got to kill penalties, and they would be unstoppable. The alumni and some of the names and some of the people that I've been able to cross paths with and stuff. Like I said, without the opportunity to do hockey factories and all that are people I would likely never get a chance to interact with, and some of the people that I've been able to build a relationship with them and chat with them and pick their brain on the side and stuff, and everybody's been just fantastic.
Well, it's interesting. Like, did you pick up? Did these clubs have, I guess, an inflection point where they said, "Hold up, like, we're going to shift our focus"? Because obviously, like, prior to this, it's not like all these clubs are talking to each other, but it's so interesting that they all have just organically sort of come up with as much as there's differences, it seemed very much there's a very united sort of foundation in terms of how they go about their business. And as you've said, it's about player development. It's not about winning. And was there sort of an inflection point where they came to this realization? Because one of the things that I kept coming back to as well was, Tom Ward from Shattuck's has been on this podcast, and he said something that's so interesting. Like, it's so easy to look at a place like Shattuck's and say, oh, it's all about recruiting. They just recruit really good players. But then you remember, like, hockey hasn't been around that long at Shattuck's. I mean, there's hundreds of other prep schools in North America that have a much longer history when it comes to hockey. And then you'd say, well, they have the rinks on campus, and you're like, well, that doesn't distinguish them at all. Like, lots of schools have access to ice.
Yeah.
But the one thing that he said was that, when it came to recruiting, he said, look, like, he's like, everybody points to the players that have come through here. And he said, granted, there's Crosby and, a couple of world-class players, but he's like, look, if you take the list of players we've turned away and what they've gone on to accomplish, it might be more impressive than the players that we've produced. He said, but we protect the culture here above everything else. We protect the culture. And if we don't feel that a player or the family is going to fit in our vision for how we go about our business, then we just say no.
Yeah, and Tom was just a terrific example of a few different things that you hit on there as well. We talk about where some of these programs come from. If they've always been a development model and such, Shattuck St. Mary's was going to be shut down. They had a consultant come in and basically say, where can we save this thing? And they're like, oh, you got some arenas in here. You ever really use them, or you really emphasize them, or anything like that? Some of the European clubs, especially with the first teams, when they've changed regimes, it's a new ownership or a new general manager or somebody like that that's saying we don't want to just pay for players. We want to develop our own players and go through that route. So there's a few different avenues that they end up getting to that. But Tom was a perfect example of that, and he continues to emphasize all those things in the conversations that we have. He hits on Jonathan Taves, Jonathan Taves, and he says
line
it.
center.
Yeah, he sends it. Yeah, this is a team already. Let's. I don't even know if you could build a fantasy team this good with the amount of money that you're allotted each player. But he said Jonathan Taves.
Cap for sure.
Make no mistake about it. Jonathan Taves probably becomes the player that he becomes wherever he goes. So they're extremely humble with what they do and what they've done before. And again, if nothing more than being humble of what they've done before, it's a hunger of how they can make that program better. And you kind of laugh at first when you're having some of these conversations with Frölunda and Frölunda. As I said at TCS Live and in the article as well, Frölunda wants to be the best at everything that's free. They don't want to be second best at anything.
Love it.
And you're thinking about Frölunda. I mean, it's Frölunda, of course. They'll be just fine. But it's an everyday grind of everything that staff does. And the biggest part of that, and I swear from all of those groups is everybody's pulling in the same direction. And that's players, that's staff, that's parents, that's coaches, that's general managers. Like everybody is on board. And if you're not, if you're not on the boat, you're off the boat. It's plain and simple.
How do they do that? Because that if I was to like step back and say the biggest challenge in all this, or the part where I'm like, man, like this is hard to do. I mean, there's a lot of egos in our game, and I mean, and especially when you get people who are high performers and competitive, as you noted, but it amazed me how all these organizations, they were able to gain alignment, and not just alignment, continuity. Like so many of these people you spoke to had been around for a long time. And I'm sure like, if I mean, listen, if you've got Frölunda, Shaddix, Jokerit, like any of these organizations on your resume, you're coveted.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're a younger coach, especially if you're coming outside of the program, and Jokerit calls, I mean, you're taking that call. John Alder Mannheim calls and wants you to be a development coach. Of course, 100%. You get the chance to do that. That's unreal. But there's a lot of the camaraderie, like you said, the work that gets done behind the scenes and the culture of these programs is unbelievable. And the buy-in, I think, just comes specifically from the philosophy and being hard pressed on what that philosophy is and not wavering. The one thing that I took away from a lot of these programs and was really impressed by, and again, it kind of comes back to what we're saying about having to win at all the levels in Canada and in the US and such, is the patience. When you think about it, you've got these guys these kids in a program at 8 years old, 9 years old. Like that's, 9 years, like another half of their lives, more than half of their lives involved in the program to get to a point where they're becoming draft eligible, able to play for their country. Like that takes a long time. And for Frölunda, as an example, they were one of those teams that went through a gap of success, or they were, not to say they were struggling, but they weren't winning on a consistent basis. And it's simply because they were biding time for these players that they were trying to develop through their program to get to the point where they were able to help. And that's, one of the biggest takeaways was, you have to really buy into this. Like everybody can buy into something, however it gets spun by the right salesman. But
when things are going well, it's easy to be bought in.
Easy. But we're talking 7, 8, 9 years before the fruits of your labor might help the first team or might go internationally. I mean, you have to be a firm believer in those philosophies. And that's why we said at the beginning, the philosophy runs these programs. It's the individuals steer the ship and everybody's on board with that, but everybody is behind that philosophy. And the answer to every question is essentially in reflection. Is this going to help this player? Is this in line with our philosophy? Yes or no? And it's very easy to decide not to do something if it just doesn't fit. So I think that, the communication, like you said in the question, the communication, I think is probably the biggest part of that, just getting everybody on the same page. But it's the common goal, I think, that energizes a lot of these coaches too, in that, like we said, they're competitive as well. They want to be able to say that we developed this person or that person, or we won a U20 world championship with our guys. Like you look at Switzerland or any of these other smaller countries that are starting to get into it, and then you see Jokerit, you see Sweden, and some of the other countries that we visited through hockey factories already. The first thing that they talk about when you ask them what they're most proud about is the players that have played for their national teams. And
Interesting.
that was a big takeaway for me, that they're obviously wanting to develop players for their first team. Most of these clubs want 50% of their first team players to be developed from their program, which only makes sense. They also want a good chunk of people at the national level to come from their program, to get drafted, that guys move on to different leagues, get into the NHL or the KHL or wherever they end up playing. So I think the competitive part of it from the coaching side of things is not just the enjoyment of being around the ice and being around the guys, is to say we helped this person get to this particular place or meet this particular goal. And there's a great charge behind that.
So cool, man. So cool. I mean, listen, we could be here all day.
We probably could. Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I mean, this is frankly, I mean, you talk about passion. I mean, I think this is why I think myself and our team at the coaches site love what we do, because I just think it's so rewarding. And I think it's so fascinating how these organizations and these people go about their business, because they're not winging it. Like there is a formula here that I think anybody, and I think this maybe doesn't get touched on as much, but I've known players that have gone through a couple of these programs, and they don't talk about it from they talk about the experience, not about I'm in the NHL now because I went here. It's like, no, I had, in my formative years, I was fortunate just to be a part of this culture and in this environment, and it impacted me as a human. And, and that's what they reflect on. So, again, I think there is a blueprint, and I, again, just so proud of the work that you've done. And we feel so fortunate that we get to share this with the greater hockey community. And I think this applies to anybody that's involved with sport, that hopefully, through this, we're creating better experiences for young people and their families as they go through their own hockey journey. Couple of wrap ups here, Matt.
Sure.
So let's say you get on a plane today and, down the road in Windsor, and you fly to Hawaii. So it's, you got a probably a, 8-hour commute.
Sure.
If you could handpick anybody that you spoke to through this process to sit beside you on that plane,
oh wow,
so you could just pick their brain a little bit more, who would it be?
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one. That's really tough. I think we mentioned Tom Ward a couple of times, and I think he stands out for me for sure. Ben,
you might just end up talking about fishing though the whole time. You might not even.
Fair enough. I might be an expert of fishing then. You never know what happens, and probably not a bad spot to land in Hawaii if you're an expert on fishing all of a sudden. But Mike Needham again stood out to me quite a bit as well. I think just the presence of Roger Romberg and Frölunda was huge. I'd love to take everybody from Jokerit. They were just fantastic. If we could charter a plane instead of just having one
now
seat,
it's a party.
that would be. But if Frank Fischhauer stood out to me in our conversations, coached with Jung Alder Mannheim, he was one of the most entertaining interviews I think I've ever had, and I used to work in radio and have interviewed any number of people in that capacity as well. I mean, we talked for about an hour and a half, and it was probably 11:30 p.m. in Germany when we were done. And that was the only interview I did where I felt like I had to cut him off, because he was just going story after story and was just hilarious. And so I messaged him on on Instagram a couple days ago, and he got a great kick out of being on the front page of the ebook. So
No,
he's
so good.
he was pretty excited about that. But yeah, I mean, it would be really tough to narrow it down. I think every program had a couple people that really stood out, and that's the beauty and the specialty of why these programs are what they are. And the one thing that I want to mention too, like when you in previous when you were saying, this isn't just about hockey players.
Yeah.
This is the people that go to that school. I mean, you know, we can talk about Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon all we want, but it's not a class of 2 people every year. Like, these are a lot of people that will probably not play professional hockey, or their last stop is playing at Frolunda U18, and you know, they go on to a career or something like that afterwards. There's no divide here. Like, they're trying to create the best experience possible for each individual and make each individual better than they were when they or better when they leave than they were when they arrived. They want every person, whether it's an engineer or a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a hockey player, to have grown because of that program, and it's from the top down.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. I mean, you touched on it. Like, you know, your little guy's starting his hockey journey, and so is
Yeah.
mine. And you know, we recently moved from Vancouver north to a little community called Squamish, and
Mhm.
he's, you know, he's turning 4 here in a couple weeks, and once he turns 4, he can, you know, officially take part in kind of, it's like the U5 program, and
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
he thinks he's getting called up to the Rangers,
Sure.
but it's funny, like, just having I've been involved in hockey a really long time. Been involved in the coaches side a really long time. Been around a really good people, but this series has so impacted me
Hmm.
because it's opened my eyes to things that I speculated upon. It's just confirmed, and it's also some things that maybe I had a different viewpoint, and I'm like, man, like I gotta perhaps change my own perspective. But
Hmm.
my point is, now that I have this knowledge, I feel so much responsibility that I can't not share it. Like, I can't, like, I got to make sure that our program here, you know, provides the same sort of experience. Cause I think, man, if you have
Hmm.
this knowledge, you feel kind of obligated. Like, you got to go share it and make sure that as many kids, you know, have this type of experience with our sport, because at the end of the day, that's hopefully why we're all doing this.
Exactly, and you know, the last couple of days have just been wild. It's been an incredible experience to see the feedback, and to see how many people are using this material, and hoping using this for the greater good. I mean, my girlfriend, and when we were talking about it yesterday, I was getting choked up thinking about it, and I will try not to get choked up as we do this here, but like, it's the simple statement that she made was, this is going to impact hockey. Like, this is
Oh,
going to make programs around the world better by using this material, and you know, learning from these people who, again, a coach in Squamish, BC, will probably not ever get a chance to interact with the head coach in Frolunda, but just hoping that from the conversations that I was fortunate enough to have, that they're learning something from that, and they're bringing that to their own programs. And if we all as a whole can get better from that material, I mean, it's just incredible.
well, and hey, Matt, we're not done. We're
Oh,
doing it
good.
again.
Yes.
I'll just mention for our listeners, it's going to come out here in the next couple of weeks, depending on when you listen to this. And if you're a member of the coaches site, Matt did a presentation at TCS Live, our conference at the University of Michigan, where he highlighted some of the key takeaways from his experience. So that's absolutely must watch. And we're doing season 2 of Hockey Factories, and the first edition or first story is coming out next week. So I don't think we
Hmm.
want to go too in depth on all the programs that are going to be featured. I'm
For
so
sure.
excited because I was a part of the intro call for the first program we talked about, and my hair was pinned back.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so can you just maybe tease out a little bit of who you're going to be featuring, and some of the things people can look forward to?
Yeah, for sure. This one, and I found every article, and we kind of talked about this when we got a chance to meet up when you were in town here a couple weeks ago. Every story or every article kind of took on a life of its own, or an angle of its own, just
Yeah.
you know, organically. the one that we do to start season 2 is a very obvious of where the focus is on this one, because you've never seen anything like the building that we're going to talk about in this one in your life.
It's nuts.
Google does not do this justice. I certainly don't do it justice writing about it just in the written word. This place is unbelievable. It is truly a factory, and we're going to get an opportunity to really go into the science behind not just hockey, but sport with this one.
Can you say who it is?
Sure. It's we're going with Zug in Switzerland. So if you do get an opportunity to beforehand to prep yourself, you can search for Zug's program. You can search for OYM, which is OYM, which is the training facility. You'll think it's made up. It's incredible. It looks like one of the most beautiful towns in the world. And then you see this massive 40,000 square foot facility that is full-time scientists, full-time chefs. It is unreal. There's no way to describe it. And I really hope when I sent the article over for them to look at, saying I hope this even somewhat explains what you guys are able to do there, because I'm not sure I can.
Well, I think after our initial call with their group, kind of teeing that up. So I don't know how long ago that was. I was talking to my wife. I'm going to sound like a complete idiot when I say this, but like I think my exact quote was, I said, "It's like if Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Santa Claus got together and made a baby, and that baby was a hockey program. Like, it's that wild and over the top. Like it's crazy.
It is. I don't know how or what to compare it to in any sense. It's a fortress of a building, and inside it's its own world. It's got its own postal code or zip code, and what happens in there is, you talk about changing hockey. What's happening in there is changing sport, and that's not just hockey. They've got 10 different sports that work in that facility, and it is really really amazing.
Well, like this, like true story. So literally, as we're getting ready to do this, your article just got dropped into my Slack channel. From Derek, our director of content.
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet. I can't wait. Like, it's the first thing I'm going to do when we get off this call. But I'm so excited. And listen, man, hey, I've said this ad nauseum. We can't thank you enough. I think what you're doing is so valuable for our game. And I just think it's so cool that through these bizarre circumstances, we got connected, and then just, the right person got aligned with this project, and it's so valuable. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, and your team. It's really been incredible. I mean, to get a chance to help work with the podcast, and Justin put that together. I just sent him about 6,000 snippets, and he put that thing together and made it sound human. And he was unreal. Derek, who does a great job with the editing, and Steven and the rest of your team there. It's a chance of a lifetime for me, and I've humbly accepted that, and still can't believe that I'm fortunate enough to get to have these conversations and have this kind of impact. And I can't thank you enough for the opportunity, and I'm extremely proud to put these out there. And I really hope that our game gets better because of it.
Well, listen, just last thing before we go. So everybody listening, if you haven't done it already, like, you probably should have just shut this off and gone and searched for Hockey Factories on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. But go check out Hockey Factories. We're going to drop the first episode in the Glass and Out channel. So we just spoon feed it to you. And just, Matt, really quick, anybody that wants to get in touch with you or find you on social media, how can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can find me on social media. It's at Matt Dumouchelle. The name's on the bottom of the screen because it's going to be difficult to spell that out. It's going to take up half the interview here. But you can also find the information on the website too. But the last name's Dumouchelle. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram if you just want to see pictures of my kids. But please reach out. I love having these conversations. TCS Live was just such a great opportunity to connect with a bunch of people that were like-minded, that had stories to share and all of that stuff. So I'd love to have a conversation with anybody that's looking to make their program better. And if there's something that I can do to help, that's an incredible thing that I'm proud to say I can do.
Awesome. Well, hey man, this has been a lot of fun. Can't wait for season 2 of Hockey Factories, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron.
The Glass and Out podcast is a The Coaches Site production.